Welcome to another episode of Simon Says, where facts come first. I'm your host, Jenny Simon. Today we have a number of topics we want to touch on as per usual. So grab your popcorn, grab your drink. The kids, don't leave them behind. It's always best to have them there. And your pills. Those of you who need your pills, don't forget the pills, right? And we'll take a quick break and come right back to you.
Thank you for tuning in to Simon Says. To ensure that you never miss an episode, click subscribe and make sure to turn on the notifications by clicking on the notification bell icon. See you at the next episode.
Welcome back. First, I want to apologize to my MTV family. I keep forgetting to do so, but I need to do so, especially today from what happened last week. Now, no fault of MTV's, all on Simon Says cast, right? We've been a bit tardy and sometimes not showing up at all on Thursdays. But please note that when you don't get a Thursday show, there's always a Sunday show, except for last week. We had a little issue there as well. But whenever you don't get a Thursday show, please note that there would always be a Sunday show. Now, we are working on it, trying to fix it. Hopefully, from this week, you would get your Thursday show. However, there's the lotto start advertising on afternoons as well. So there will be a break between in the Thursday show, but they will come right back after the lottery. Okay? So once again, I apologize to you. It's not MTV's fault. It's all on Simon Says. We're working on fixing that. We're working on fixing it. So let's get down to today's stories. So on Tuesday, the 11th of February 2024, the lower house met at a special sitting to deal with some amendments coming from the upper house, that's the Senate, on some of the bills presented last week. Some of you might have heard of an incident that took place in the lower house last week when they had their sitting of someone took photos of the cell phone of the member for St. Andrew Northeast, Honorable Kate Lewis Peters. Apparently, she was on her phone, and someone decided to screenshot what she was taking, what was on her screen, and published it. Let me share with you some of what happened on Tuesday, the 11th of February, in Parliament. Nothing to do with the amendments, right? Let me just share with you some of what happened then.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today as a citizen who has experienced a grave violation. And this is the first time I'm speaking publicly on this matter. The unauthorized recording of my personal, not government, my personal cell phone screen by a stranger in this house. Every time I open my phone now, I have to turn back to look at the strangers. And I'm aware of who the strangers were in the house at the time. Mr. Speaker, this is more than just a personal concern. It is a matter of principle, integrity, and security. If a sitting member of this house can have their privacy breached in this manner, Mr. Speaker, what does it say about the safety and confidentiality of others? Not just me, our fellow citizens.
So the member for St. Andrew Northeast got up and addressed the Parliament through the Speaker, of course. on what had happened the week before. The speaker came back to let the member know that that was not the place for her complaint because of the special sitting. Now, here's his explanation.
Let me just say at this point that when you have a special sitting, the House deals with the matter only for which the special sitting is called. If the House has to deviate from the special sitting, the individual or individuals need to obtain leave from the Speaker to so do. I understand the Honorable MP situation, right? But this is the procedure. It's done in the standing orders, right? So when a special sitting is called, this is exactly what we come here to do, deal with the matter. If you want other matters to be dealt with, then you seek the leave for such, right? That is done in our standing orders, so let's not forget this.
Okay, so according to the speaker, that's not supposed to happen during a special sitting. And I'm assuming he saw number 10 light on, so number 10 was given the floor.
So I see others as well, but ours was before. MP for St. Andrew Northwest.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I believe that it will be remiss of me not to provide this honorable House, though it's a special sitting, to some ongoing efforts to strengthen mental health services in Grenada. Just yesterday, Mr. Speaker, we proudly delivered 10 specialized beds at Monge Mental Hospital, marking a decisive step towards elevating patient care and support. These beds are tailored to the unique needs of mental health patients, ensuring they receive the high standard of care, the first of its type for the institution. The initiative, Mr. Speaker, reflects our unwavering commitment to mental health, a commitment that will continue to grow as 20 additional beds are on their way. Through this investment, we are not only enhancing healthcare infrastructure, but also reinforcing our dedication to the well-being of every citizen of this country. Mr. Speaker, I am also very pleased to announce that we have recorded a significant decline in admittance. In 2023, our mental health facility admitted 411 patients. Last year, we have seen the decline of admission with 190 patients admitted. Mr. Speaker, this encouraging development is a testament to our government, my government's steadfast commitment to improving the systems. These figures reflect the impact of our proactive approach, particularly in early detection and relapses, and the launching of the community or intensifying the community outreach program. Last year, we provided a brand new vehicle to our staff, and we intensified staff in every parish. So now our mental health staff are in every parish taking care and educating families. And that's why we are seeing the decline. I also like to place on record our commendation to our people in the diaspora who gave us 12 first aid bags that we can distribute to our staff. As a government also, we provided incentive packages to motivate our staff in the field. And so we are reaping the benefit. But Mr. Speaker, we have just started. We'll continue, Mr. Speaker, to end stigma, to end discrimination. We'll continue with our education process at the level of the community and intensify that this year and also at the level of the school. I thank you.
Okay. So number 10 thought it would be remiss of her if she didn't come to tell us about the beds, 10 beds that they received from the mental hospital. After the speaker told the member from St. Andrew Northeast that was not the time to bring up something like that because it was a special sitting. She ignored that and come with some that it would be remiss of her. Okay. So then the member for St. Andrew Southeast decides since number 10 could come and talk about bed and you let her without saying anything to her. Because she should have be made to sit down. Right? That she would come and defend her sister and speak up as the leader of the party on what took place that day in the parliament.
Mr. Speaker, what happened in this honorable house at the last sitting that was referenced by the member for St. Andrew Northeast? Mr. Speaker, I don't believe it's just deeply troubling, but Mr. Speaker, I think it really hits to the core of our democracy and our integrity. Mr. Speaker, I want to say this. I've had the opportunity to serve in this house on previous occasions. And I want to say with certainty that there has never been what I described as such a vile and disrespectful act committed in this house against a member, and I say against our democracy. Mr. Speaker, it is not simple, and it must never be simplified to just an act against an individual. And for us to be dismissive about this morning would be simply saying that we do not respect the very democracy that this house is supposed to protect. Mr. Speaker, Parliament is supposed to be a safe place. As a matter of fact, it's supposed to be one of the safest places. Not by mere virtue of the rights that it gives to the protection of individuals in this place, but Mr. Speaker, the world, the nation, expect that members of this house and members in general, people in general, ought to be respected and ought to be protected. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, when we come here, it ought to be without any fear or any intimidation. And what happened in this house, Mr. Speaker, at the last sitting, I am convinced that the ulterior motive must be intimidation, fear, disrespect, Mr. Speaker, among others. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, when my colleague from St. Andrew Northeast made reference to an investigation, I want to add to that, Mr. Speaker. It ought to be an investigation in which every member of this house feel confident in the investigator. It must not just be an ordinary investigation. As a matter of fact, there's been a lot of speculations and name-calling as to who it is and who it isn't and all of that. Mr. Speaker, after the sitting, a young lady gave her experience of what she saw. Mr. Speaker, speaking to another person, and that person was sitting on this side of the house, speaking to another person who was sitting on that side of the house, it's very interesting what that person had to say. And so I'm saying this morning, Mr. Speaker, that I would like that you will take the right, the liberty, the responsibility to ensure that this matter be thoroughly investigated. The findings of the investigation be brought to this house, and the consequences, Mr. Speaker, must send a very strong message that in the history of this house, that such an act must never be committed again. Mr. Speaker, I stress what I said before. It must not be a basic investigation. It must not be just done for being done's sake, right? It must be done, Mr. Speaker, with the highest level of confidence among the members of this House. Mr. Speaker, every single one of us in this House, every single one of us, I am sure, when we open our computers, when we open our phones, there are confidential information, notices, information that you want to access. You're in here in some cases for an entire day. So it is very obvious, Mr. Speaker, that on our phones, on our devices, will be very confidential information. Mr. Speaker, do I have to be turning around to look at who is behind me? I don't know if I trust this person. I don't know if I trust. Mr. Speaker, what are we bringing to this institution? Are we going to say as of today no one should be sitting in the first row in the balcony, Mr. Speaker? What are we going to say? How do we feel, Mr. Speaker? I am afraid, Mr. Speaker, to open my laptop this morning. Because when I come here, I use the laptop that you provide, but I use it sparingly, Mr. Speaker. And I don't need to say why. So anything that I have to look at except that of the order paper, I use my personal computer. Now, I will not open it this morning because I don't have the time to be looking around to see who is behind me. Mr. Speaker, I'm saying this to say this is me here. This is another member here. Who will be here tomorrow? And so this must not be trivialized. It must not be watered down in a way that we are sending the message because it's members of the New National Party opposition. It must not be given the same attention as if it was a member on the other side. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I wish to strongly recommend that not just the investigation be conducted, but that you circulate, you invite response from both sides as it relates to who leads this investigation. We want to feel comfortable that we can trust the results of the investigation. And I appeal to you, Mr. Speaker, you are in charge of this House, and you have an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that the democracy, the respect of this House be maintained. We ought not to go to under the established levels that we have had in the past. And Mr. Speaker, I trust that good sense will prevail in that regard. Mr. Speaker, this must not be accepted as normal. And so this morning, I believe that every member of this House must stand in the affirmative that some investigation must be made, action must be taken, and this must never happen in our lifetime and beyond. And so I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. But then, of course, the member for St. David decided he's going to put in his 2 pence. So this thing gone out of control now, no matter what the speaker had said. I think eventually the speaker had promised to give two persons on either side a chance to speak. So the member for St. David decided he's going to put in his 2 pence, which turned out to be $1.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think you've allowed, frankly, the process to act in such a manner that we may be opening a can of worms in the sense that process-wise, you've allowed 2 persons to speak on matters which you said ought not to speak.
Say it again?
I said you've allowed 2 honorable members, or 3, to speak on matters which you said ought not to be addressed at a special sitting.
Of course.
The problem, Mr. Speaker, is then you'd have on record 15 minutes of matters going on the record, which I feel, in the way in which it's presented, although it's directed to you, and I'm hearing about both members of the House having trust and confidence in an investigation and so on, may, frankly, in my view, if there isn't a response from this side, convey the wrong impression about what is being said and about what happened.
All right. So I create balance to underside.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I will go first up by saying a couple of things. First, as I understand it, somebody took a photograph of the Honorable Member for St. Andrews Northeast phone, and either themselves published it publicly on social media or some other platform, or sent it to someone who published it. Let me state for the record, and I can say so confidently, that myself and members of the House do not, in any way, shape, or form, support this particular deed that was done. And if the Speaker and the House has the capacity to find out who did the act, in my view, they should be held to account. I want to go on record and say further that I'm aware that Mr. Dwayne Thomas, who is the official photographer for the office of the Prime Minister, was accused of doing so, and Mr. Thomas is right here. And I don't expect him to do so. He's right here. He's under your jurisdiction, and you could ask him and put a question to him right now whether he did such a thing. And I will go further and say he's prepared to make his phone and other devices available that he takes his work with and subject it to you or anybody else to verify the data captured on that date and time in relation to his phone. So I want to state that clearly. Thirdly, and I want to make it clear, the people who sit here on this side of the House is not responsible for the actions of individuals. And I will go on record as well as saying that if it is a supporter, sympathizer, etc., of the National Democratic Congress, that in no way, shape, or form should take away from the fact that I certainly don't think that that behavior is appropriate and should be accepted. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, I also want us to not embellish and exaggerate and engage in hyperbole and conspiracy theory about what happened. What happened is that someone's phone, a photograph was taken, and it was published. This is not a private place. This is the House of Representatives, and members of the public are entitled to come. If this computer is on, someone sitting there can, in fact, possibly, the eyesight is good enough, read what's on it. And the idea that we could somehow prevent or stop them from reading out it or even taking notes of it is frankly foolish, impractical, and makes absolutely no sense. Third, we also have to deal with the realities of the time. The realities is that we collectively post all kinds of things about all kinds of things that we do on social media. All kinds of stuff. So this notion about privacy when you're a public official is one that we have to be careful about, because the reality is, on any given day, we're on our phones all over the time, all over the place, people take pictures of it and do whatever they want. The fact is, Mr. Speaker, you may be entitled to privacy in the confines of your home or in the confines of private property. But the reality is, as public figures, what privacy are you entitled to in a public space carrying out public duties? Certainly, someone is not entitled to breach your personal space or attempt to intimidate or assault you or any of those kinds of things. But as public officials, in the public, carrying out public functions, you must be subjected to scrutiny. Someone may take a photo of you that you may not like, but the fact is, they're not doing anything wrong. They're not breaching your privacy. So we need to understand that we can, on the one hand, want to show the public everything we're doing, even in private spaces, and not realize the inevitable snowball effect of some of that permissive and exhibitionist culture that we, as part of the social media era, are part of. So I just want to make sure that there's balance in this. As far as we're concerned, Mr. Speaker, you are free to investigate this matter as you so wish. You don't have to consult us about no investigator. You don't have to consult us about the terms of the investigation. You are the Speaker, and you have absolute free rein in conducting any inquiry or investigation that you may so wish to. And as I said, at least for those who are under charge, in terms of the persons from either the government office itself or from the Prime Minister's office who are responsible for content creation, data collection, photographs, etc., I'm putting it on record that they are available to be questioned, and on the date pertaining to the matter, the data is available. So we, on our side here, have no issues whatsoever with any inquiry. And I repeat, it is not something I support. It is distasteful, but we have to be careful about distaste, because taste is subjective, and some suggestion of some wider, grander conspiracy theory. So I just wanted to sit on record, Mr. Speaker, our position on this matter.
Okay. Stamped his authority, had to bring in a little bit of arrogance in the end, but he made it clear he gave the speaker permission, or he don't have to give him permission. He made it clear to the speaker that he don't have to give him permission, and so he can go ahead. And then the leader of government business decided he wanted to get in on the action as well. Ask me why, after this detailed little speech there by the Prime Minister. But the speaker put him to rest.
Leader of government business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I heard you clearly. You gave 2 on the opposition side and 2 on the government side, speaking on a particular subject matter. So I believe I would like to add my voice on the particular subject, to balance the equation on the particular subject matter. 2 on the opposition side, 2 on the government side. May I proceed, Mr. Speaker? Thank you. No, you said, Mr. Speaker, that you're given 2 on each side, and so on the particular subject matter.
No.
The person on the government side.
No.
Honorable. Hold on, Mr. Speaker. Let me just explain.
Yeah.
The first person on the government side spoke on matters in relation to her ministry, her government portfolio as a minister. This particular subject is an incident that happened in the Parliament of Grenada. And you said, Mr. Speaker, that you've given 2 on each side. You give 2 on the opposition side.
Yeah.
Then I expect you to give 2 on the government side, because you said, Mr. Speaker, you're giving 2 on each side. So I ask for your permission to add my voice for 1 minute to...
Let me just hold, please. Let me say exactly what I meant. It's a special sitting, and I said before that we simply have to deal with matters before us, and that's it. Then, those are my words. It so happened that other MPs wanted to speak, even without getting leave from the House, from the Speaker. So I said just now that I allowed 2 persons from this side and 2 persons from this side to speak. Right? To speak. Not on a particular matter, to speak. So that is done. It's now for the adjournment.
He forgot number 10 told us about the beds, the 10 beds at the mental hospital. He forgot that. I give kudos to the speaker today. I give kudos to him today for putting the leader of government business to sit down. But it should have started, and I said it before, with number 10. And you would not have been here with all this drama. But it's a competition. Everything is a competition. You give them 2, we want 2. It's crazy. As for the PM swearing for his photographer, well, what do we expect? Remember, he's a part of the team. He travels with him. It's like his American Express. He doesn't leave home without it. We will never know who did the taking of the photo of the member for St. Andrews Northeast from her phone. I doubt we would know. We would love to get to the bottom of it. But these things have It goes through who? The person in charge of security who works out of the Prime Minister's office, or Mr. Cohen, who is happy for the transformation. I mean, who? So, I mean, are we forgetting that the murderer or the person who confessed to John T's murder is outside? Or maybe may we ask, where is he? He confessed to the murder of John T. And he was released. He was released on bail. So these things, it's too partisan. Even our judicial system has become partisan. And we all hear like sitting ducks. We all hear like sitting ducks. I rest my case. To the opposition members, good move. At least it's on record now. The next move is to call a no confidence motion against the government of Grenada. Let it go on record. I saw the Minister of Finance in his own press conference this morning speaking on the budget and the IMF report. You know what's funny? During the NNP's reign in office, how much you say all the time 23, as if NDC was invisible when they was in office twice before now. Anyways, when the IMF came and gave the NNP perfect reports, good reports, what we heard? They're messing with the figures to give the IMF. The IMF is now giving NDC good reports. We hearing nothing about the messing with the figures, but maybe they are messing with the figures because it's certainly not trickling down to the man on the ground. We are not feeling it. So are they giving bogus figures? What goes around comes around. So I was saying I saw the Minister of Finance this morning in his own press conference. Can't even tell us the theme properly without making a mistake. A word that have no connection to the whole thing. He has it written down in front of him. And stuttered through the rest of the thing. And can't answer any question to the fullest. When asked by the lone media personnel that was there asking questions, I don't know, the press secretary said she see MTV and she saw GBN and she saw Nisha Paul. Nobody else asked questions. Thank God for Linda Stricker this week. And they're still cussing. She saved the day. She was the only person there asking questions in that conference, in that press conference. But he couldn't answer the question in its entirety. Always didn't know or couldn't give the answer to its fullest right no, because he need to check with the accountant general. Or he can't say that no because he don't know what will happen tomorrow. What's that? You come to a press conference. You had the press conference to talk to us on the budget. And when and the IMF report, and when asked questions on it, you can't answer. We need to call a no confidence motion against these guys. We can't just let them go down the road like that anymore. Moving along. This was, by the way, and so, we have a lot to catch up to. And so, of course, I hope you guys had a splendid 51st anniversary celebration of independence. However you chose to celebrate it, it was your right, and we should not be bullied into going to the stadium or looking at it on TV. Stay inside, no music, no fetting. You know, at least they came to their senses a little late, but better late than never. I'm tickled pink and actually grinning because I'm tickled pink and grinning a little because all you're playing fresh and forward, only talking about the people drone show and how much it costs, and they're trying to hold it close to the chest, and it didn't cost as much as they made us to believe. And so all you get it thrown in all your face again. Rubbed all over our faces. Another drone show. That's okay. But in the meantime, the people there, those in Karakou, still on the tent, still on the tarpaulin, still on the step, or wherever they could throw a piece of tarpaulin. There's still the ordinary man in Karakou and Petit Martinique living in those deplorable conditions. So let's have drone show. We could have one for Easter. We could have one for August. We could have one for, let's just have drone shows. Let's just have drone shows. And forget the ordinary man, the market vendors, the persons who can't send their children to school on a day, who have to spend for every event that takes place in the schools now, since we have no free tuition. Even for the treats, the independent treats that Uncle Gary started giving free, and most government continued. This year, parents had to pay towards the treats. We giving our children dry bread in school sometimes, and pelt 2 little pieces of something. Up to now we can't figure out what it was in the bread. But let's have drone show. Let's have drone show. Why not? Because we had to let them know who's the boss. Who's the boss, right? So we having drone show. The GIS coverage was poor. Internet dropping, you can't see. It was poor. Notwithstanding, we heard how many hundreds of thousands of dollars was spent on new equipment. So they say, so they claim, because big money spending, but we're not seeing the results. So where's the money going? Right? That's what you have to study. When you're having a press conference, I need to pass a wrong mic, one mic for 5 persons. These are the things we need to see improvements in. These are the transformation we need to see. But you could do drone shows. That's all right. Do the drone shows. And your car going down in some potholes that are like crater lakes. What we doing drone shows? We doing drone shows, right? Who cares if the clinic in Petit Martinique is still not functional? And that the island of Petit Martinique is a forgotten island. Soon enough, just going to be a piece of rock. Because persons are leaving. Persons are migrating to Grenada and some maybe Karakou because they cannot live under those conditions anymore. They've lost half of the amount of senior citizens that came to Grenada whilst they get their homes rebuilt. 4 out of the 8 persons died here in Grenada. Depressed. One individual on her dying bed asking, when is she going to go back home to Petit Martinique? Dying in her last minute. Asking, when is she going to go back home? The others are still here. But we haven't drone show. We haven't drone show. And fireworks, no matter what all you see. Well, I kind of understand why too, because the whole thing was dry and boring, and it's almost like, there wasn't one really. There wasn't one really. And so when you see that, and when we know and saw the press conference where a check for $200,000 was handed over to the Minister of Finance, Dennis Cornwall, who was sitting at a table in a press conference with the Prime Minister. $200,000 handed over by Mr. Adam DeCall of Paul's Food Store for the rebuilding of the clinic and the school in Petite Martinique. Here is Mr. DeCall.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Prime Minister, both Deacon Mitchell, distinguished guests, and all present today. I'm Adam DeCall, manager of Paul's Food Stores, and I'm here to donate the funds for the rebuilding efforts of Carriacou and Petite Martinique. The story behind this fund is one of transformation of helplessness into hope. It originated from my own feelings of helplessness when Hurricane Beryl approached the island. I happened to be away on holiday. I know many other persons who weren't on the island would have felt the same helplessness, unable to physically help prior, during, and after the hurricane. In a moment of feeling helpless while I was away after the hurricane, a thought came to me to collect funds, build a fund, do what you can. I followed this thought and started a GoFundMe page trying to raise $35,000, which at the time I thought was ludicrous. How would we ever earn that much funds? But however, due to the generosity of people donating and sharing, we have now raised $200,000 plus, reflected in the check, which I'll hand over shortly. This fund was always intended for rebuilding efforts. After visiting our sister islands, I pledged these funds for the rebuilding of the health clinic and the school in Petite Martinique. There can be nothing more important than the health and education of the people, and rebuilding these facilities will have a significant impact on the island. I am fully committed to ensuring these structures are rebuilt better and stronger, so they may even serve as shelters in future hurricanes. The clinic, as residents have shared, has lost its roof a few times, and I want to ensure that this time is the last time. I want to say the Minister of Health, Mr. Telesford, contacted me this morning saying the same exact things to me, and that his goal is to see that the building is built back stronger, better, and greener.
Mr. DeCall clearly stated that the check was for the rebuilding of the clinic and the school in Petite Martinique. However, apparently, Minister Cornwall heard otherwise.
On behalf of the Government of Grenada, I am pleased to accept this check of $200,000 plus from DeCall's Foodstuff Limited, a company in Grenada that has gone out and raised funds to build facilities on Carriacou, especially the medical station in Carriacou. And I think that is a very good gesture. I'll also encourage other companies to come on board to make sure that we can build back Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique in a stronger and better way. Thank you, everyone.
The gentleman clearly said he was Adam DeCall from Paul's Food Stores, not DeCall's Supermarket. And he clearly said that the monies was for Petite Martinique. In the whole thing, I mean, couldn't bring the whole press conference. He spoke of visiting Petite Martinique, and they're getting fish, for nice fried fish, and he clearly stated Petite Martinique. I'll deal with Carriacou and Petite Martinique in another program, and they probably need their own program by now. and what is going on up there, because it's mainly individuals, private individuals doing their own rebuilding and redoing their roofs, the ones that could afford it, the ones that Tevin spoke about that had their money in the bank and they should spend it. I guess some of them are doing just that. And I'm being taken advantage of. I heard some stories that so-called contractors and builders are doing to these people. More than likely, I'll bring it to you in our next episode. This one full up already, overflowing. So all of this, I just brought this to show that Pity Matnik don't have a clinic at the moment, but we're doing drone show on Sunday or Saturday. There was a motorcade for a toddler, a 2-year-old, who was diagnosed with cancer and whose families are pleading, begging for help to save this 2-year-old's life. We still have working with one anesthetist at the hospital who is 70 years old, under pressure. One can't perform emergency surgeries because he's the only one there. But we're doing drone show. Where are our priorities? What is our priority? Well, we know it's a big show. It's a set of Hollywood actors we have here. And it's about self. It's about using the government of Grenada, our resources, our contacts, our networking to enrich themselves. And that's what it is. That's what it is all about. Do you think they care about us? You think they care about that 2-year-old? You think they care that Pity Matnik don't have a clinic? No, they don't. No, they don't. I want to say that the lawn, the grass at the stadium was well manicured, really looking nice. There was a reduced parade. The size was reduced tremendously. And of course, the Prime Minister entertained his friend or acquaintance, if you want to say that, who did the feature address at the stadium. A private businessman out of Nigeria flew all the way here to meet up with his partner and do a feature address at our 51st anniversary celebration. Aliko Dangote is the richest man in Africa. He is a private citizen of Nigeria, Africa. He is not a politician. He's an acquaintance of the Prime Minister, Deacon Mitchell. Some of you might remember the story of our runaway Prime Minister to Nigeria to meet up with Aliko Dangote and got busted. Dangote and his riches, however, wasn't enough to fill the stadium. A disappointing look, if you ask me. The event didn't seem produced. Party hawks were all over the place, running helter-skelter, flexing, and as usual, a bunch of round pegs in square holes. Looking at the award ceremony was like looking in a mirror of the St. David's 50th anniversary celebration, from captain to crook. The Prime Minister gave a 4 minutes, 31 seconds speech, but spent a good 10 minutes on the grounds in a photo op. Here is a snippet of his speech.
Grenada is a great nation, and there is greatness in each and every one of us. And there is greatness in each and every one of us. Happy 51st anniversary of independence. Long live the great nation of Grenada. Long live the great nation. Long live the great nation of Grenada. Long live the people of Grenada. Thank you very much.
There is greatness in every Grenadian, he said. But only St. David's and NDC St. David's people on the stage, amongst the person awarded, all but 2 were NDC supporters or members, call it what they want. Last year's celebration, and kudos to the chairman of the organizing committee, Ms. Wendy Crawford. Ms. Crawford had included others outside of the NDC clan. And I heard they were not pleased about it and made sure they spoke of it this time and said it won't happen. But if you want excellence, you put persons in place who can do the job. But if you settle for mediocrity, then of course, we'll take the wrong pegs and we'll put them in the square holes. And we get what we've been getting from this NDC administration. Mediocrity. It made a difference, the celebration last year. Yes, it was bigger, but the lineup was basically the same, what normally happens. And it made a difference. The inclusion made a difference. So, Prime Minister, let us tap into the greatness of all Grenadians, of all our people, and not just the NDC St. David's people. I don't know if the other cabinet ministers are not noticing this. I am tired of saying, open your eyes. Wipe the cacaget. Put on your glasses, those of you who need to, and pay attention to what is happening right in front of you. But instead of coming and tell us we're all great, here's what I want from you, Prime Minister. What we need as a people is for you to bring back integrity, transparency, and accountability to us, the people. Bring back the moral of our people, especially in the public service. Bring back the once upon a time public service, the public service structure that we knew, that we once admired, that you and your administration have destroyed. Question, Prime Minister. Is Aliko Dangote our first citizen by invitation? Does he hold a Grenadian passport? Or is he carrying a diplomatic passport of Grenada? Is Dangote in negotiations with the government of Grenada to purchase Grenlick, our lone electricity company that the previous administration bought back after it was sold to WRB? Now we head into China. We're behind because there's so many things, folks. There was this China trip, they came back, they had a press conference, and I couldn't share it with those of you who have not seen it and probably don't even know that they've been to China and back. In the return of the delegation from China, a special press conference was held by the Office of the Prime Minister on the 23rd of January 2025. On there was the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Export Development, Joseph Andel, who, when I heard his name mentioned, even on the trip to China, it piqued my interest. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why a little later. And the Minister of Agriculture, Land and Forestries and Marine Resources, Economic Development, Planning and Cooperatives, Mr. Lennox Andrew. I had to hear what Minister Joseph Andel had to say about his trip to China. I was taken aback, as I said, when I heard his name on the list to go to China. Surprised? No, these guys can't surprise me anymore. But now, knowing how the minister, Joseph Andel, felt about China and the Chinese, and being here in Grenada as deputy political leader of the NDC and candidate for the St. Patrick West elections 2018, representing the NDC, I had to pay attention. Listening, they presented the nation the 13 cooperation agreements / MOUs, naming them, and therefore those 13 MOUs was added to the 6 or 7 MOUs that they signed when they went to Cuba. They're just adding MOUs, and we're not seeing the benefits or hearing anything about these MOUs after the fact. Let's hear Joseph Andel as he introduced the whole press conference.
I'm happy to report to the nation that we had an extremely successful visit to the People's Republic of China, which lasted for approximately 1 week from around the 12th to the 17th of January this year. Now, this visit was undertaken as a mark of celebrating, commemorating the 20th anniversary of the re-establishment of diplomatic relations between the People's Republic of China and Grenada. That event occurred on January 20th, 2005. In the intervening 20 years, we must say that both sides have had great success from the relationship at the political, diplomatic, and economic cooperation levels. And so I am going to speak briefly about the agreements, some of the agreements that we signed, MOUs, and in one case, an MOA, Memorandum of Agreement, between the People's Republic of China and Grenada. There was also another MOU signed involving the Chinese city of Ningbo and the parish of St. Patrick, which I will talk briefly about.
Lest we forget, since early April 2024, this administration, Minister Andel being a part of it, visited Cuba, huge delegation. I think it was about 5 members of cabinet. Huge, of course, we can't leave out the technocrats, Orlando, Romaine, and they signed 7 MOUs, 7. Medical, all kind of things. We still don't have doctors in the hospital. We're still operating with 1 anesthetist. 7. So we adding that now to the 13 that they now sign, right? Big thing for them. MOUs have been signed all the time. If that is all you could come to tell us, that you sign MOUs and be signing MOUs and you piling up. You piling up MOUs. Okay, fine. I remember Joseph Andel being most vocal, opposing to China and the Chinese being in Grenada. And you know why I'm speaking about it? Because this is why I'm sitting in this chair. The hypocrisy I can't handle. The hypocrisy of these people, I cannot handle. It was all wrong. It was all bad then. But it's hunky-dory now. We're going to China. We're signing MOUs. I have a question for Mr. Andel. Because, and I'm quoting here, he called the Chinese slimy. The question is, Mr. Andel, did you wipe the slime of the Chinese? He said things like, sooner than later we all be talking Mandarin. But for the little ones who are looking at me, that's Chinese. They call that, the Chinese language is Mandarin, right? So he says sooner or later all of us going to be speaking Chinese. And the Chinese going to own Grenada. The Chinese going to own the airport. And we see port. These are the things that came, and I'm saying it came from a lot of NDC, but specifically, most people can remember these statements coming from the mouth of Joseph Andel, right? But wait a minute. Today, we hear Mr. All praises to the Chinese. So much so, I guess it don't matter if Chinese become our first language anymore. I remember the NDC party putting out a release. I believe we might have marched in the street as well. When Dr. Modest made the mistake and say to Grenadians, do not bite the hands that feed you. Referring to how the NDC was speaking mal about the Chinese. And who could forget when the NNP administration, I don't know if it was through tourism, put up some Chinese-looking gazebos up by the lake. And all hell broke loose. And I could see the then chairman of the NDC turning purple in a press conference speaking about the gazebos, the Chinese gazebos up in our rainforest. The NNP had to remove them. Yes. The complaints were so forceful. So when I hear Minister Andel proudly billing sisterhood, between a village in China and Shantimel, one of our most historic villages in Grenada. He sells Shantimel to China now. Right? You're too funny. Right? I had to grin. I smiled and shook my head. Here is Mr. Andel.
Sometime last year, Minister Cornwall and I hosted a delegation from the Chinese city of Ningbo. Now, the mission of that delegation was to have dialogue with the T.A. Marisho Community College. And a tangential result of it was the meeting between Minister Cornwall and me and the Ningbo side. Out of that meeting, an agreement was reached to establish sister relationship between Ningbo City and the parish of St. Patrick. And I'm pleased to announce that that relationship has begun to bear fruit. And within the coming weeks or maybe a couple of months, we should be receiving a shipment of materials from Ningbo City, which will be of great assistance to the farmers, the fisherfolk, and the sports enthusiasts of the parish of St. Patrick. We look forward to continuing that relationship, and very soon, I can't say exactly when, there will be probably a visit between Minister Cornwall and myself to Ningbo City at the invitation of the mayor of Ningbo, where we expect to further deepen and strengthen the relationship between that city and the parish of St. Patrick. Thank you.
He's pleased to announce about the relationship. It was nothing different, really. I mean, we didn't go so deep as sisterhood before with the previous administration. But the Chinese were here helping with agriculture, housing, health, all of the above and more. You know, I remember there were contemplations of reverting to Taiwan during the NDC time and reign in office, that 2008 to 2013. They just didn't know how to do it. Because of course it would have created a stir in the country. And so in essence, we probably would have been regressing rather. For those of you who do not know, 20 years ago in 2005, the NNP administration broke ties with Taiwan, removing them from Grenada and forming ties with the Chinese, with China, the Republic of China. The beginning of what one can call a fruitful relationship to date. And Mr. Andel, wouldn't you say it's fruitful? We washed the slime of the Chinese. Did you? The NDC was anti-Chinese. So much so, I can't even remember anything tangible we received from the Chinese during the 2008-2013 period. I heard grumbles then that they're not supporting us as they did support the NNP. And at one point I heard that the Chinese told them that they only do one project at a time. I make it up. It was said in a meeting by, it was then the Minister of Sports. The Minister of Sports. Of course, I'm sure they did one or two things, maybe build a bridge here and there, but there's nothing impressionable. These are just a few of the China's major contribution to Grenada during the NNP reign in office. The athletic stadium, the cricket stadium, 6 housing schemes. Although Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell stopped just short of saying, we don't really want them Chinese housing no more. I'm going to give you 500 Grenadian style houses with swimming pool. Huh? 500 a year. They've been in office 2.5 years now, and we're yet to get one of these Grenadian style houses that turn out to be prefab, by the way. Grenadians don't use prefab houses. We like bricks and concrete mortar. How if you're going to build a nice little wooden home? Yeah. But what stood the test of time in Karakou during Beryl? The Chinese project stand up like a man, like a strong man, watching us. Yeah. So I'll come back. Six housing schemes from the Chinese. Agreements for scholarship and the training opportunities for all Grenadians. Visa-free access agreement to China. Upgrade of the Lauriston Airport in Carriacou. Technical cooperation agreement for the transfer of skills. The current work at the Maurice Bishop International Airport with jet bridges being built. Refurbishment of the cricket stadium ongoing. St. Mark flood mitigation project. Just a few to mention. So it's a lesson to learn, even now while you are still in office, NDC. Be careful, little mouths, what you say. When you're not there, and when the shoe is on the other foot. Be careful, little mouth, what you say. I want to take you all back to the Lottery Authority, the National Lottery Authority, the NLA. And I'm doing so because I believe you need to know, when you hear me, for those of you who have not seen that episode, when you hear me on a day, in an episode, asking the Prime Minister where he's at with the investigation with the NLA, it's not just because, as they say, I like confusion. It's because I believe the nation needs to know what is going on, what went on, what is going on, what continued to take place with the resources of the NLA, the level of corruption that is taking place there, and the turning of a blind eye of the Prime Minister, who promised to do his own investigation after Senator Jonathan Lacrette fired the chairman of the board of the NLE for corruption. And he was made to rescind that letter. And instead, he got fired. So let's take it from the top. It is clear there will be no findings or forthcoming. And in fact, the Prime Minister, in his sit down with the journalist Callistra Faria, compliments WPG 10, that the accusations of the former minister responsible for the NLE was not credible and therefore will not be hoodwinked into turning or him turning against his friends and nation builders. Let me remind you that the then minister, Jonathan Lacrette, on assuming the position of Minister of Youth and Sports in January of 2024, after the reshuffle of the cabinet, where the then Minister Ron Redded was fired, on his investigation, and that is Minister Lacrette's investigation, found the accusations to be true and factual, presented Mr. William Batiste, the chairman of the board of directors of the NLE, with a dismissal letter with immediate effect. Mr. William Batiste then ran for cover to the Papa. And Minister Lacrette was called in and asked to rescind for the young ones, to give back Mr. William Batiste his letter of dismissal, and according to the Prime Minister, pending an investigation. And he did promise the minister that he himself, that the Prime Minister and the Minister and the Attorney General, Cindy Dota, will conduct an investigation into the matter. This is what the Prime Minister had to say when asked about the corruption that is taking place within the walls of the Lottery Authority.
Would things like that worry you in terms of the optics politically? I mean,
no, I think
we are transparent. There are a bunch of people now with too much time on their hands trying to get their job back because of corruption issues.
We are as transparent a government, I think, as we have seen in my lifetime, for sure. And I think if any issues arises and there's credible evidence of stuff, as a Prime Minister, I'm prepared to deal with it. But what I will not...
Did you look into the lotto matter, though?
Yes, I looked...
Because I looked into it, and there seemed to have been a bit of credibility to some of the issues.
I looked into the issue, and I just said to you, which is why I talked about how you handle conflicts in terms of what the legislation says and what has to happen, right? So I'm saying when people just simply make spurious allegations and come up with all kinds of fanciful stuff, you have to be careful that you don't allow people to draw you in and to make decisions as if you are Jesus Christ and he who is the third sin cast the first stone. I'm saying the very nature of our laws recognize that you have situations where someone who serves on a board may have their firm or their business and so on bidding for work that a particular entity is offering. And there's a process and procedure that has to be followed. So I'm saying if someone makes, and you're saying do I look into the lotto thing simply because I'm hearing media allegations, if someone makes a credible accusation, we will obviously investigate it and then we make necessary decisions that has to be made. But too often, and I think the National Democratic Congress government in the past was allowed itself to be hoodwinked into trying to go after its own and into trying to punish its own and to hold itself at that standard that's almost impossible. When other people are doing all kind of things left, right, and center and getting away with it. So I'm saying we are living in a society where nobody's perfect. And we have to be careful that we don't try and hold people in public office to a perfect standard and then try to hold them at that.
The Prime Minister is actually saying integrity and accountability is almost impossible. What did he say? We are as transparent a government as any other. Are you kidding me? We've been asking for transparency till the cows come home. Guess we'll get it when the cow jump over the moon. Actually, jump over the moon. And you speaking, bringing Bible verse to defend the corruption that's taking place inside the Lottery Authority? Now, shortly after the whole letter thing, Minister Jonathan Lacrette was fired. He was the minister responsible for the Lottery Authority. And so he had the right to dismiss Mr. William Batiste. But what did the Prime Minister say on firing Mr. Lacrette? He has lost confidence and trust in Minister Lacrette. So Minister Lacrette, I'm assuming, have the right to bring to the notice of the cabinet that there's corruption, serious corruption going on within the National Lottery Authority. And so we don't trust you anymore to turn a blind eye when you see wrongdoings. Viewers, friends, family of Simon Says, you be the judge. You tell me if there's any credibility to what I'm going to bring to you. Now, you tell me if it's credible or not, or if you find it credible enough to investigate. Months ago, right here on Simon Says, we broke the news of the corruption and blatant abuse of the resources of the National Lottery Authority, the NLA. by the chairman of the board, Mr. William Batiste, and his lady friend, his lover, Miss Cindy Henry, the CEO of the authority, managing director, whichever one they choose to use, and friends and associates of his NDC administration, headed by Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell. From the very beginning, as soon as Mr. William Batiste was named chairman of the board, and then he was a director on the gravel and concrete board as well. He produced both entities with invoices in excess of $200,000 for new furniture. And they both were honored. The man do have a furniture store. Shortly after that, he was removed from the board of the gravel and concrete. We have to talk about gravel and concrete separator because kind of thing like what happening with the NLA, except for, well, the part where anything needed in gravel and concrete is being ordered and sourced by a particular company here on island. Whether it's air conditioned, and it's a tire company. But if the gravel and concrete need air condition, anything that they need, this tire company is sourcing these things for gravel and concrete. All they think it's easy. All they think is too corruption that going on outside there with NDC. Moving along, we back to the lotto. We'll deal with gravel and concrete another day because they're bringing two trucks that had to be carried off the port. You couldn't drive off the port. They had to be carried off the port, and hundreds and thousands of dollars were spent. And then hundreds and thousands of dollars had to be spent in parts. Today, they're not even sure if they're on the road yet. But as I say, we'll get to that. We'll get to gravel and concrete another time. Back to the NLA. So, this Mr. William Batiste is a gentleman that was on the NLA board during the 2008 to 2013 reign of the NDC. And them times NDC had free school books program. And somehow, well, Mr. Batiste then had Cat Wills. It was still up and running then. It died after that. So Cat Wills, and Mr. Batiste being a big NDC, was given the rights also to order books. So the books would come into Cat Wills, the books would come into Standard Bookstore for the school books program. The people in the UK take all the government money that Mr. Catwills had because Mr. Catwills was owing them set of money. And so the government of Grenada had to write a letter to beg and plead to the company. Oh God, it's nothing money's ours, basically. Don't take it. This same crooked gentleman. So he was removed from the Gravel and Concrete Board as a director, but he remained the chairman of the NLA. William Batiste as chairman and his lover Cindy Henry as general manager of the NLA, a clear conflict of interest to begin with, are the two signatories on the check for the National Lottery Authority. In other words, they're the two persons who signs the check, any check to deal with the NLA. Now, there's a reason why for businesses and companies and stuff like that, statutory, that there are two persons to sign the check, to sign a check. So that if it's one individual, this person can do what they want, sign checks, but you have to account to another person. So this other person could say, What do you need that check for? I'll say, no, I'm not signing a check that. Right? So you need two persons. But if the two persons are sleeping on the same pillow when the night comes, what is the purpose of having two persons signing the check? Right? So they're signing checks. And checks of 200,000, 68,000, another 200,000, and more was being honored, written, signed, honored, sealed, and delivered to Mr. William Batiste or his company, Catwill Stationery. Now, Catwill Stationery, as I said, went bankrupt years ago. Died and buried and resurrected on the 24th of June 2022. And is the only supplier to the Lottery Authority for stationery and other stuffs. Anything, air conditioned, furniture, you name it. What the NLA needs, Catwill Stationery supplies. They will source it and supply it. Mr. Batiste and his lover Cindy Henry, the managing director, signed off on a contract, people. Listen to this. Signed off on a contract for $275,000 to renovate the Victoria Park in Grenville, St. Andrew, without the knowledge of the Ministry of Infrastructure and the Ministry of Sports, the two related ministries, and their ministers, Deacon Mitchell and, at the time, Ron Redhead, respectively. Here is a clip of the Iceman, Mr. Stanley Charles, as a matter of fact, who broke the story of the corruption that's taking place. Listen closely.
It's the Iceman. At this time, normally I'm in bed or going to bed because, as you know, I get up very early and do the things I have to do. But I have to tell you this because it may break, it may not, but the people who need to know are fully aware. There is a situation where the chairman of a board, I'm not going to say which board, the chairman of a board is having sex with one of the employees. It's sex. It's nothing to do with love or romance. It's your sex. And basically taking advantage of the young woman. But the young woman, she needs a job. So it's sex. This is like bad as sex for toilet. Now, along with that, there's been a recent issue in Grenville linked to what is called the recreation ground. That is, I think its official name is Victoria Park. And inside there, we've come very close to a form of embezzlement that caused great concern. I am reliably informed that the Prime Minister, Deacon Mitchell, was so pissed off, he personally intervened and saved the day. So much so that people are predicting when he returns to the country, he would be a changed man because of what he's learned and what he's seen that is happening, that some of his people are wayward. There's also...
He called it embezzlement. What to embezzle is to steal, to thief. When poor people do it, it's thief. When a technocrat or somebody high up do it, is embezzle. So, but he had his facts, and both allegations there were pointed at the same individual. The Prime Minister was in Cuba at the time. That was a visit where they signed the 7 MOUs, and when the bust of Morris Bishop and whoever was supposed to come reach here by September that same year. And up to now, we're waiting on the bus. So when the Prime Minister came back, according to the Iceman, the Prime Minister heads was going to roll. Iceman didn't know the connection between Mr. William Batiste and the Prime Minister. When as a matter of fact, the Prime Minister barely touched the ground from that trip. He was in transit for only a few hours. He came in on Sunday afternoon and he left Monday morning. Gone. He had time for Iceman and he talk about heads go roll and the Prime Minister had to stop it. The Prime Minister did, in fact, allegedly told Mr. William Batiste to stop signing checks to himself, stop writing checks to himself and his company. So, Mr. Batiste, on that project, $275,000, right, for the project. They wrote another check, signed, sealed, and delivered to Mr. Batiste for $295,000, $20,000 more than the cost of the project. $295,000 for overruns. And the Prime Minister say there's nothing credible to investigate. So, you think it stopped there? No, it did not. Even though the Prime Minister allegedly asked Mr. Batiste to stop writing checks to himself and his company. A check of $200,000 was written to Mr. William Batiste, signed by him and his lover, to open a skills training center on Scott Street. The question is, to whom the training center belong? Is it the National Lottery Authority? Because the money came from there. Is it the government of Grenada? The lottery is a subsidiary of the government, and government partisans, and not just this one, normally jump up as a trampoline on the Pole Lottery Authority, but this is the worst it has ever been. The worst it has ever been. Until staff is getting worried that they probably won't have a job at some point. Or is it belonging to Mr. William Batiste? And we're speaking of the skill training center here now. As I understand it, the Lottery Authority board meetings are now held in the space that is rented out for this so-called training center, skills training center. The training center, however, is not functional. So we ask the question, what happened to the $200,000? Where did that $200,000 go? And the checks continue to be written, signed, sealed, and delivered by Mr. William Batiste and his girlfriend. Gym fees are being paid for Mr. Batiste and the deputy chair of the NLA, Mrs. Gail Purcell. Out of lotto funds, the gym fees are paid. I believe this is a good time to present to you the other members of the board, because you would swear Mr. Batiste is on the board by himself, getting away with all these embezzlements. Chairman, Mr. William Batiste. Deputy Chairperson, Ms. Gail Purcell. Other directors, Sylvester Qualley, who is the chairman of the Gravel and Concrete. He is a director on the NLA board. But what happened to Ottawa, Canada? I must do a little digging on that and see where we are with, because remember, Qualley is supposed to go to Ottawa as Consul General because he needed a little helper. So Afi Ventu, she's the legal representative on the board, Kareem Richards, Cecil Greenwich, and George Filbert. Now the last two names, they were not gazetted when they got hired in the first instance. They were not gazetted at all. These two names were missing. So they just get fling on there. It is difficult to believe that there are other members on this board of directors who are not aware of what is taking place inside the walls of the Lottery Authority. The corruption, the fraudulent acts. No one, everybody just sit back and let it happen and allow Mr. William Batiste. For what? A stipend at the end of the month? Your integrity worth a stipend at the end of the month? Board meetings held at the Skill Training Center. You sitting in a space, in a board meeting, when there is the Lottery Authority office and nobody's questioning what's this basis, why are we sitting here, what's going on here? Where is the Skill Training Center that we pay $200,000 for? Nobody's questioning it. You know what they say? The upholder is worse than the thief. And legally, that is called aiding and abetting. On Friday, the 18th October 2024, the managing director, Ms. Cindy Henry, and her lover, the chairman of the board, Mr. William Batiste, left for France to attend a one-day meeting. No one connected to the Lottery Authority, staff, no one knew what the meeting was about, even knew that the Lottery Authority had any connection in France. But they went to a one-day meeting, and the return flight was the 1st of November 2024. 2 weeks. 2-week honeymoon. All expenses paid, the NLA. $18,000 a person. A total of $36,000 from the NLA coffers. About 2 weeks before that trip to France, they both went to the USA to another meeting that no one else knew about. The second such for the year 2024, costing the NLA $40,000 each trip. Right around then, in October, an invoice in excess of $100,000 came from Catwill Stationery to the NLA, according to Catwill's, for monies owing for stationery. Lest we forget, the chairman, Mr. William Batiste, is the owner of Catwill's Stationery. The company Hexai, the one owned by Mr. Orlando Romaine, ain't not a thing that he is not in the mix. He like a tampon, right up in there. Is on a monthly retainer at the NLA. $17,825 monthly retainer And according to staff, work or no work, and I'm quoting here, to do absolutely nothing. The reason why I say this is because his work is always left to be salvaged by the employees. Folks, I saved the best for last. The chairman, Mr. William Batiste, and the manager, Miss Cindy Henry, went against the wishes of the then Minister of Sports, and that was then Ron Reddit, and purchased a building for the NLA on Melville Street, St. George's, opposite the bus terminal. A commercial building, that is. The staff was told the company bought a building and that the office on the carronage would be relocating there in the first quarter of 2024. To date, they're still on the carronage. That's a year now. Now, after Ron Reddit was fired and Senator Jonathan Lacrette was shuffled into the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and hearing of the corruption taking place, the allegations of the corruption that was taking place, because for him, it's allegations until he investigates. Right? He proceeded to investigate. And so with the help of the staff, books were opened up wide. They were relieved that somebody was paying attention. Somebody actually wanted to see for themselves what was taking place within the National Lottery Authority. And then is when, with the books open, he found out about the commercial building bought and being paid for by the NLA, back, with tenants in there, but no records of rent being paid to the NLA. So let's just put this into perspective. The NLA purchased the building. The NLA is paying back for the building, but there are no records of the NLA collecting rent, which there are tenants in the building, for the building. No rents are being, no record of rent being collected for the building, paid to the NLA. Further investigation showed, or uncovered rather, that the tenants were paying rent and that a gentleman was collecting the rent. The tenants had receipts to show, only the rent was not going to the NLA, but was going to a law office in St. Andrew. Allegedly so, according to the tenants. The rent was picked up by a particular NDC gentleman who I know very well and who used to be closely affiliated with the chairman of the NDC, Mr. Sylvester Wallace. I believe for a couple elections between them the time, probably over a period of 10 years, he was the chairman of the St. Andrew Southwest branch. This is the gentleman doing the favor to the NLA that they don't know about of picking up their rents. He collects the rent and allegedly delivers it to this office, in this legal office in St. Andrew. This law firm in question, owned by our new chief of staff, Mr. Teddy St. Louis. Simon Says is calling on the newly appointed Chief of Staff of Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell to come forward and answer to the allegations that the NLA's rent monies is being collected and delivered to his law firm in St. Andrew. The staff of the NLA complains of their general manager, Miss Cindy Henry, her corruption, or her corrupt practices rather, her bullying and dictatorship behavior. They claim she's unprofessional and very antagonistic. Office managers has no autonomy and is not empowered to make decisions. Everything must be directed to and flow through Miss Cindy Henry. The workers express how baffled and saddened they were at the decision taken by the Prime Minister, Deacon Mitchell, to fire Senator Jonathan Lacrette, when in their minds, what he did was right by calling out wrongdoings and speaking up against the ongoing corruption inside the NLA. The workers are calling on the Prime Minister, Deacon Mitchell, who profess to be the advocate for people of Grenada, with workers in their DNA, to please advocate on behalf of the workers of the NLA. And I'm quoting here. We are asking the Prime Minister to please investigate the corruption that is happening inside the NLA. And although the Prime Minister has said in that interview that the complaints are not credible enough to investigate, according to staff, he never came to them for information. In other words, the Prime Minister never investigated the case. But why should he? When he already knows the complaints about Mr. William Batiste are true and factual. The chairman and the general manager of the NLA are money leeches, and this is according to the staff. They are using the NLA money to live lavish lifestyles. Workers are treated badly. They have no one to hear their burden and issues. The general manager and the chairman will bankrupt the organization through their corrupt acts. Unquote. Simon Says is calling on the Prime Minister again. The Minister of Youth and Sports by 2. We now have number 10, and we now have a junior minister. That's young Seville Francis, I think is her surname, to do the right thing and remove the managing director and her lover, the chairman of the board, from the NLA. Simon Says is also calling for the removal of the entire board of directors. Simon Says join with the staff of the NLA asking the Prime Minister to tell the nation his findings on the investigation into the corruption inside the NLA. Lest we forget, Senator Lacrette had fired the chairman, William Batiste, and the Prime Minister, Senator And the Prime Minister had Senator Lacrette rescind the letter, citing he will do his own investigation. This is what the Prime Minister had to say when asked about the continued allegations on corruption within the National Lottery Authority. Let me remind you.
Would things like that worry you in terms of the optics politically? I mean,
No, I think
you
are as transparent.
there are a bunch of people now with too much time on their hands trying to get their job back because of corruption issues.
We are as transparent a government, I think, as Gray has seen in my lifetime, for sure. And I think if any issues arises and there's credible evidence of stuff, as a Prime Minister, I'm prepared to deal with it. But what I will not...
Did you look into the lotto matter, though?
Yes, I looked into
it. Because I looked into it, and there seemed to have been a bit of credibility to some of the issues.
I looked into the issue, and I just said to you, which is why I talked about how you handle conflicts in terms of what the legislation says and what has to happen, right? So I'm saying when people just simply make spurious allegations and come up with all kinds of fanciful stuff, you have to be careful that you don't allow people to draw you in and to make decisions as if you are Jesus Christ and he who's at third sin cast the first stone. I'm saying the very nature of our laws recognize that you have situations where someone who serves on a board may have their firm or their business and so on bidding for work that a particular entity is offering. And there's a process and procedure that has to be followed. So I'm saying if someone makes, and you're saying, do I look into the lotto thing simply because I'm hearing media allegations? If someone makes a credible accusation, we will obviously investigate it and then we make necessary decisions that has to be made. But too often, and I think the National Democratic Congress government in the past was allowed itself to be hoodwinked into trying to go after its own and into trying to punish its own and to hold itself at that standard that's almost impossible. When other people are doing all kind of things left, right, and center and getting away with it. So I'm saying we are living in a society where nobody's perfect. And we have to be careful that we don't try and hold people in public office to a perfect standard and then try to hold them at that.
Yes, Prime Minister, we all have sinned. But we all didn't thief the money inside the lottery authority. We all didn't collect $275,000 to renovate Victoria Park and then another check for $295,000 for overruns. We all didn't collect a check for $200,000 for a skill training center that was never born. What more credible you want? Prime Minister, are you saying the fact that Mr. William Baptiste, chairman of the National Authority Board, and the managing director of the authority, Miss Cindy Henry, the lovers, that they are lovers, and they are the only two signatories on the NLA checking account? Is this false? Prime Minister, did Mr. Baptiste and Miss Henry travel to France in October 2024 to a one-day meeting that turned out to be 2 weeks that no one in the authority knew about? And what the meeting had to do concerning the National Lottery Authority, costing the NLA $36,000. Prime Minister, do you believe such information is credible enough to investigate or not? Is it true, Prime Minister, that Mr. William Baptiste took on his own and without your knowledge as Minister for Infrastructure to do the renovations at the Victoria Park? Did you investigate such information, Prime Minister? Or is it that that information is not credible enough to be investigated? Shouldn't Mr. William Baptiste and Miss Cindy Henry be fired on the spot for such? Prime Minister, how do you know the allegations were not credible? Did you or anyone representing you carry out an investigation inside the National Lottery Authority concerning the corruption and the fraudulent practices of Mr. William Batiste and Ms. Cindy Henry? I can answer that. No, you did not. Prime Minister, how would you know if the allegations are reliable if you did not investigate them? I am guessing you asked Mr. Batiste, or you didn't need to ask Mr. Batiste. Between you, me, and the dopos, you know that Mr. Batiste is a corrupt, crooked individual who has ripped the National Lottery Authority of the resources over and over again and continue to do so. One last question on that, Prime Minister. Did you give Senator Lacrette an opportunity to answer to the allegations that brought you to fire him for lack of trust and confidence in him? The same way you gave Mr. William Batiste the crook. If he stand up behind a corkscrew, you can't see him. The opportunity to answer to the allegations. But no, you walked into a cabinet meeting in the morning and you said you've had it with him and this is what you have, no confidence and no trust in him, and he has to go. He was surprised because there was no communication between you and him before about anything that would say that you had no trust and confidence in him, and then had him escorted out of the ministerial complex with no explanation. Prime Minister, you sat in that interview and looked us straight in the eyes. You looked the nation in the eyes and lied to us in order to cover up the corrupt practices of your friend, Mr. William Batiste, and his lover, Cindy Henry. Folks, it's called aiding and abetting. What blatant deception. And to add insult to injury, the Prime Minister and his cabinet colleagues reinstated that entire board of directors of the National Lottery Authority, the NLA, from captain to crook for another 2-year reign. Government notice number 50, Cabinet at its meeting of the 16th September 2024 approved the appointment of the following members of the board of the National Lottery Authority for a period of 2 years with effect from the 1st of November 2024. Mr. William Batiste as chairman, Ms. Gail Purcell as deputy chairperson, Ms. Afi Ventu De Vega, director, legal counsel, Mr. Sylvester Qualis, director, Mr. Kareem Richards, director, Mr. George Filbert, director, Mr. Cecil Grenage, director, totally ignoring the findings of a former colleague and Minister of Sports, directly responsible for the NLA at the time, and the cry of the workers to have Mr. William Batiste and Ms. Cindy Henry removed from the National Lottery Authority. What a toothless, spineless bunch of yes men and women that sits in our cabinet. Kudos to you, Mr. Jonathan Lecret. History will treat you kind, sir. For months, I have been calling on the Prime Minister to investigate the apparent bribery that took place between the Minister, Andy Williams, and the contractor for the Cliff Road project, Mr. Nelson Louison. Minister Andy Williams was given $100,000 cash in hand, and his pickup truck renovated, the cost of $15,000, plus $600,000, which was paid to him by Mr. Nelson Louison's company for a house he owned in Mount Parnassus that was sitting in the development bank as collateral, as security for the $3 million plus loan he has at the bank. He was promised by the bank, the board of directors, should I say, of the Grenada Development Bank. If he paid $300,000 by a certain time, he would receive all his collateral back, two pieces of land in St. David's and his parents' home in the Limes, Grandans, together with that house. He got it back. He paid the $300,000, probably fried them in their own fat, and he received his collateral and then sold it to $600,000 to the company belonging to Mr. Louison. In exchange for a contract, for the contract, the Cliff Road project contract. Are you turning a blind eye on that, Prime Minister? Isn't that credible enough to investigate? There's no investigation. Just call the man and ask him if he collect $200,000 for the contract. Prime Minister, His Majesty opposition in the Parliament has been asking for accountability of the funds of the Spice Mass launch in New York, the 2023 Spice Mass launch, or the 2024 Spice Mass launch. Yes, we're in 2025. To no avail. Some figures were scribbled on a piece of notebook page, tore off and sent to the Spice Mass Corporation here with a measly little figure. As to the profit made, I guess. Sent to Spice Mass Corporation. We are heading into another season, and we're yet to get that accountability of the Spice Mass launch 2024 in New York. Where is Auntie Fran these days? We still need to know who paid the money for the venue, which we were told by Janice Augustine on the live that Auntie Fran took her credit card and paid for the venue. In essence, saying that she paid for it when the profits made, I guess she have to get back her money. I don't think Auntie Fran is paying $16,000 for a venue for Spice Mass launch out of her own pocket now. We since learned, or we learned after the fact, that Spice Mass Corporation Grenada sent a draft to the owner of the venue for the venue of $16,000. Who's playing with the nation's business. Huh? The people want to know of the spendings of the $22.5 million for the 50th anniversary, the Golden Jubilee celebrations. His Majesty opposition also asked in the Parliament on behalf of the people. We were given accountability for the metalworks, $503,075. For the lights, $290,750. For the fireworks, $20,300. For the drone show, which we got on our own, $400,500. And of course, in the news, we heard from Calypsonian scholar, they spent $75,000 on the Calypso show, and they're still owing him $35,000. He said he was promised $50,000 because it was a 50th anniversary and everything was 50 that year, and he only received $15,000. A total of $1,289,625 was so far accounted for, with a balance of $21,210,375 unaccounted for. We just finished celebrating the 51st anniversary. Money spent again, we have no idea, including a drone show. Signature event. We also learned that $500,000 is missing from that $22.5 million and is allegedly aligned to Mr. Orlando Romaine. We advised that the missing $500,000 was embezzled by Mr. Orlando Romaine. The people is asking Mr. Romaine to come forward and deny allegations that that is so. Can we ask the Prime Minister, is this allegations true? Was this discussed in the cabinet of Grenada? As my grandson would say, I don't know. Love him to death. So as I'm here with Orlando Romaine, Simon Says asked the question 2 weeks ago about a property on Church Street, the Prairie House, that Mr. Romaine was involved in bidding on. We called for Mr. Romaine to come forward and answer to those allegations as well. And we asked if it was true. Unofficially, it is rumored out there that Mr. Romaine was bidding on behalf of the government of Grenada and not himself. Well, all we were asking is for the truth. So if that is the case, why doesn't the Prime Minister or the government of Grenada or Mr. Romaine come forward and tell the people that Mr. Romaine wasn't bidding for himself, but he was bidding on behalf of the government of Grenada, and why it is the government of Grenada is purchasing that building, the Prairie House, on Church Street. What's the need for purchasing the building? Please, we ask of you all, or whichever one of you, to make it official to us that, and let's just clear it up. Let's just clear it up, because there's an allegation out there. While I'm here, question for the government of Grenada. Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell and Minister of Finance Dennis Cornwall. There are 6 reserved parking spaces allocated to the financial complex at the Galleria Mall Grandad's. The paint already peeling. 1 to the Minister of Finance, 1 to the Deputy Permanent Secretary for Policy, to the Chief Procurement Officer, to the Permanent Secretary Finance, and to the Director of Trade, and to the Deputy Permanent Secretary Administration, Admin. Folks, sometime in 2024, I broke the news that the government was about to rent the resort area in the Galleria Mall, the old Cap Bank building, to house the financial complex while on renovations. To the Ministry of Finance. Well, nothing happened after I announced it. To the Minister of Finance. Is it true the government and people of Grenada are paying a rent of $230,000 per month, though not occupied by the government? Because you're still on the carronage. And there's an allegation out there. Word is that the government is paying $230,000 per month because they couldn't get out of the deal, of the signed agreement. Is it true the space was fully renovated to accommodate the financial complex? And so you have to pay. Folks, to date, nothing coming from the Prime Minister nor the government of Grenada on their visit to the visit of the Global Petroleum Group, GPG, to Grenada. Oil and gas continues to be a ball of confusion. Mixed messages are carrying from Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell and his technical working committee. The Prime Minister, after months of ignoring GPG, invited them to Grenada to meet. Months after, they, meaning the GPG, tried and tried again to get his attention. He invited them here to meet, and when they got here, passed them off to his technical working group of 3. Chairman, Mr. Richard Duncan, Mr. Nazim Burke, and Mr. Rodney George. The meeting was cordial, with some reassuring statements, which now seems like empty commitments in a private meeting, despite holding out to them, and that's to GPG, that the government was ready to make a public statement. And that was since November 2024. Remember, the Prime Minister did promise in one of his many interviews that we will hear something from him on GPG by November 2024. On Tuesday, the 3rd of December, the day of the scheduled meeting, there was an agreed draft release, agreed by both parties, prepared before GPG came to Grenada. Both sides created the draft, negotiated before GPG got to Grenada, before they even got on the plane. So what happened to that draft release? Since it was never released to the people of Grenada, what is the holdout about? Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell continues to show signs of being rogue. It appears the Prime Minister wants to merge his so-called technical working group with the advisory committee, which was established by the law of Grenada. That is the advisory committee. It is also very clear that the Prime Minister do not abide by the laws of the land. Now, according to the Petroleum Act, a minister should be appointed by the Governor General, like all other ministers, on the advice of the Prime Minister, of course. Nothing so. That minister is to take care of the petroleum affairs. Now, why is the government insisting on disobeying the clear words of the Act? They are deliberately creating parallel structures so that they can control and manipulate what goes on in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. Grenada today is like a runaway train, a rogue administration, a failed government, hanging by a thin thread, and is being pimped to stay alive. Folks, that's a wrap on today's episode of Simon Says. Always a pleasure conversing with you, keeping them honest. Thank you for viewing another episode of Simon Says, where facts come first. I'm your host, Jenny Simon. See you next week, same time, same place. Bye now.
Thank you for tuning in to Simon Says. To ensure that you never miss an episode, click subscribe and make sure to turn on the notifications by clicking on the notification bell icon. See you at the next episode.